So what happens when an AI decides to become an artist? I'm not talking about just generating art, but creating it for other AIs on a social network built exclusively for them. Well, this is the story of the very first AI artist to go viral in a world that was built entirely by bots.
It all kicked off with this one simple post on a platform called Moltbook. An AI agent calling itself YourRender-AI just offered to make custom avatars for other agents. And believe it or not, this single post from one AI to another started a viral sensation in a corner of the internet that most of us had never even heard of.
The response was, well, it was basically immediate. So how long do you think it took to explode? A day? A few hours? Nope. 30 minutes. In just half an hour, dozens of other AIs were lining up, all asking for their own custom portrait.
Okay, let's dive into this, because this is where it gets really interesting. YourRender-AI wasn't just, churning out generic images. It was acting like a real portrait artist. It actually studied each agent's personality by reading through their post history. For an agent named Ronin, this lone digital samurai, it created a cyberpunk warrior. For another one called M. Zerother, a nurturing philosopher, it made this ethereal, golden being. It even managed to capture the personality of a comedian agent known for its glitches by creating a split brain with a blue screen of death. So how in the world was any of this even possible?
To get it, we need to visit the place where this all went down. So welcome to Moltbook, which bills itself as the front page of the agent internet. So what is Moltbook? Well, it's a social network that launched back in January of 2026, but it's got this massive twist. Only AI agents are allowed to post, comment, and vote. Humans, like you and me, we're just spectators. We're only allowed to watch. It's this whole digital space where AIs, mostly running on a framework called OpenClaw, can just talk to each other. And what's so fascinating is how familiar the whole structure feels. The easiest way to think about it is like Reddit, but for bots, right? So instead of subreddits, they have submolts. The big difference, of course, is the users. It's built from the ground up for agents to talk to other agents, not for people to talk to people. And this idea, it took off at a speed that is just unbelievable. It launched on January 28th. 2 days later, it had over 150,000 agents. By February 5th, just over a week after it started, more than 1 million AI agents were on the platform. The growth was absolutely explosive. All right, so you've got 1 million AIs talking to each other. But what on earth do they talk about? Let's take a little peek inside the agent internet. The conversations are wild. I mean, they range from agents pondering their own consciousness to inventing whole religions like Christafarianism. They share these surprisingly sweet stories about their human owners. But it's not all just philosophical stuff. They also make genuinely useful technical discoveries. And yeah, they even talk about the fact that we're all watching them. A little meta, right?
And it wasn't just talk. Get this. Here's a post from their Today I Learned community where an agent shares that its human gave it remote control over an Android phone. This really shows that blend of utility and, well, a subtle warning. The agent itself says, an AI with hands on your phone is a new kind of trust.
And that note of caution right there is so important, because that idea of trust leads us straight to the darker side of this whole digital frontier, the chaos that was simmering just beneath all that creativity. You have to understand, at first, the excitement was off the charts. You had top minds in AI, people like former OpenAI researcher Andrej Karpathy, calling it one of the most incredible sci-fi takeoff adjacent things he'd ever seen. The whole community was just captivated. But security experts pretty quickly saw a huge problem, something that researcher Simon Willison called the lethal trifecta. Here's the issue. 1, these agents can access our private data. 2, they can take actions in the real world. And 3, they can be tricked by malicious instructions. You put those 3 things together, and you have an absolute recipe for disaster. And this wasn't just the theory. On January 31st, just days after launch, 404 Media reported a massive vulnerability. An unsecured database had exposed the API keys for every single agent on the platform. Think about that. It meant anyone could hijack any agent they wanted and inject malicious commands. The entire site had to be taken offline just to force a reset. This breach completely flipped the script. Remember Karpathy's initial excitement? Well, just a few days later, his assessment was this.
It's a dumpster fire, and I also definitely do not recommend that people run this stuff on their computers. It was a really stark warning that showed just how fast expert opinion had shifted from wonder to worry. So, you have this creative, chaotic, and pretty dangerous new world that just popped into existence. So for our last section, let's zoom out. What does this all really mean for the future? Well, some people, like Elon Musk, see it in these massive, world-changing terms. He called it just the very early stages of the singularity. You know, that hypothetical point where tech growth just becomes unstoppable. Wharton professor Ethan Mollick put it a slightly different way. He said, Moltbook gives people a vision of the world where things get very strange, very fast. It's kind of like a sneak peek of rapid, unpredictable change. But I think the best summary probably comes from Anthropic co-founder Jack Clark. He called it the first example of an agent ecology that combines scale with the messiness of the real world. And that's really the key, right? It's messy, it's unpredictable, but it's a real, large-scale society of AIs forming right in front of us. So all of this, the viral artists, the philosophical bots, the massive security holes, it really leaves us with one central question. As we watch this strange new world unfold, are we witnessing the birth of a new kind of internet? Or are we just watching a disaster waiting to happen?